Hello students, welcome to E-Pathshala. My name is Arjinder Kaur and I work as an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, Postgraduate Government College Sector 11, Chandigarh. Through this module, we'll try and evaluate the successes and failures of India's foreign policy. So far, in all the modules that have been discussed on foreign policy, it becomes important for us to now consider, has India's foreign policy been successful or a failure? For such a purpose, we'll try and answer three main important questions in this module. 1. What has been the failures that India's foreign policy have faced and what were the reasons behind it? Second, what have been the steps taken to overcome these failures and has these steps been successful or not? And third, through this evaluation, we'll try and suggest some foreign policy options that India can opt for and can take steps on to improve its relations with the foreign countries. Thus, it becomes important for us at the current times and the changing world patterns to recognize our foreign policy and along with this also reorganize our foreign policy with the changing patterns of the world right now. Objectives. This module will evaluate the success and failures of India's foreign policy. The policy-making aspect, working aspect and problem-solving aspect of India's foreign policy has been discussed in this module to have a proper evaluation of its achievements and weaknesses. It is only the objective evaluation through which we can overcome the weaknesses and plan to fight the future challenges. The present module is a moderate attempt in this direction. Important questions and suggested readings have also been provided in the end of the module. Evaluation of India's foreign policy. India's foreign policy can be evaluated in three contexts. 1. In the context of policy making. 2. In the context of working aspects. 3. In the context of solution of problems. In the context of policy making. In India's foreign policy, the main objectives of regional unity, sovereignty and independence, world peace, economic development, human welfare, etc. were decided in 1946, which are relevant even today. So the process of formation of policy is important in the context of evaluation of India's foreign policy. At the time of independence, India received a well-defined work culture and bureaucracy from British, which was efficient in all sectors. There was only one sector, foreign relations and diplomacy, where India did not inherit anything. The British government never wanted Indian partnership in these areas. Therefore, when work on formation of foreign policy began, there was dearth of people with diplomatic experiences and volunteers from different services were invited. In view of specialized operations of foreign policy and importance of different sectors of the world, Foreign Affairs Department has been divided into special and different parts. At present, the Foreign Ministry has 18 specialized and subsidiary blocks that are working in the context of specialized issues of foreign policy. The policies related to the countries of the world are kept under group of countries, clubbing them on the basis of 13 different regions. Besides, embassies and various missions have been established in foreign countries. If we look at foreign policy making process during the last 6 decades, the following aberrations will come clear. The organizational structure of the foreign policy making has been faulty. The External Affairs Ministry and its missions remain dominated by ICS officers for a long time. Due to dominance of ICS officers, even after so many years of independence, the nature of execution of foreign policy could not be changed. The situation has not changed much even today, as now IS officers are getting more places in the appointments in important external foreign missions. Keeping the decisions related to foreign policy covert is an important mistake. If the outcomes of the decisions related to foreign policy are placed before experts for evaluation, then we can have decisive proof about these decisions that whether they were right or wrong. Besides, instead of serving nations' interests, they worked for their personal interests. Therefore, like UN documents and current provisions in different countries of the world, these decisions should not be spared from objective evaluation in India and also in name of keeping secrecy. The third important problem related to the formation of foreign policy is lack of institutional development of foreign policy. In 1950, for the planned development of foreign policy, Nehru established historical bloc in the foreign ministry and eminent historian S. Gopal was appointed as its chairman. The objective of this institute was to develop further alternatives of foreign policy and establishing coordination between different departments, but in later years it was abandoned, which led to status quo. In this context, certain changes have taken place in such a way that on the one hand, different organs of foreign policy have not performed their role, and on the other hand, external institutions have become more important and are adversely affecting the working of foreign policy. As far as the organs are concerned, Parliament is the most important organ of foreign policy. To remove the institutional flaws, the National Security Council was constituted in 1998, but still there is scope for improvement in the context of process of decision making and reconstruction of foreign policy. In the face of India's emergence as a nuclear power state and emerging complex world system, this situation has become very important. In the process of economic reforms initiated since 1 decade and the practice of mixed governments, instead of taking concrete steps, we are moving away from these objectives. Thus, for any government leaving ad hoc foreign policies and developing a regular system in foreign affairs under an institutional framework should be the first challenge. In the context of working aspects, the second important aspect of evaluation of foreign policy in the last 6 decades is the working aspect of India's foreign policy. This includes India's foreign policy structure, line of thought, foreign relations, foreign economic policy, international status, etc. A detailed study of these reveals the nature of working of these factors. The following aspects are analyzed under this. 1. Policy of non-alignment. 2. National security. 3. International status. 4. United Nations and India. 5. Economic development. Policy of non-alignment. For the fulfillment of objectives of the foreign policy, India opted for policy of non-alignment. This policy was adopted due to many economic, political, cultural and strategic reasons. India had to adopt this policy due to internal policies and international environment. This policy was logical, rational, and according to the ideology of that time. The evaluation of successes and failures of the policy can be done at 2 levels. 1. In the context of India's foreign policy, and 2. On the basis of India's role in the movement of the Third World, non-alignment. So far, the question for opting for non-alignment is concerned, India was aware of its national esteem and problems of newly formed nations. So even being a victim of colonialism, imperialism and apartheid, India did not want to have a permanent rigid stand against anyone through this policy. India established friendly relations with Britain, America, China and Soviet Russia and expressed its faith in establishing a world based on peace and coexistence. Under this policy, India used diplomacy as a strong medium instead of military power and alliance for India's security. Initially, there was distance in relations with former Soviet Union also, but very soon both developed close relations. Till 1991, the relations were cordial with some differences. India adopted the main structure of Panchsheel in its relations with the neighbors and tried to develop bilateral and regional relations through it, but due to many reasons could not succeed. In this way, so far the question of India's policy of non-alignment is concerned. With some failures in the initial years, it was a huge success in later years. As far as the question of India's role in non-aligned movement is concerned, the situation has been opposite from the above. In this context, India's image has been very significant, but in later years this image faded. With the founding of non-aligned movement in the decade of 1960, India has been an important nation, raising its voice on the issues of apartheid, casteism, imperialism, colonialism, etc. After the 1971 Indo-Pak War and 1974 peaceful nuclear tests, these countries appreciated India. Besides, the issue of declaring Indian Ocean as a peace zone by India and Sri Lanka has received full support from these nations. During Gulf War, India's perplexity was vivid. After this, in post-Cold War situation, the entire base of world politics changed. After the end of bipolar world order, there was a question mark on the movement of non-alignment. So due to important changes in this structure of non-alignment policy, now it is not as important as it was in the initial years of India's independence. National security. Before studying about national security, it is important to know that in present context, the meaning of national security should be understood extensively. In national security, besides the security of geographical boundaries, the security of political, economic, social and cultural aspects is also included. So far, the question of security of India's geographical boundaries is concerned, the flaws in our foreign policy become clear. The most important issue of Kashmir and of the territory occupied by China is not resolved till today. We have accepted even China's rights over Tibet about any major dissent. Undoubtedly, by opting for a compromising attitude, India has ignored national interests. Since the decade of 1970, India has tried to defend its national security by changing its policies at two levels. India has tried to achieve self-reliance by increasing its military might in terms of weapons. For this, India purchased ultra-modern weapons and their technology from foreign countries. The second important step in this direction is indigenous production of weapons by changing the technique. Besides, by opting diversification in trade of weapons, we have reduced our dependence on only one country. Pokhran 1 1974, Integrated Guided Missile Development Program 1983 and Pokhran 2 1988 were the clear examples of this. Through its diplomacy, India has tried to mold international environment according to its interests or secure its interests in those situations. To secure its interests as per the situations before the 1971 war, India signed a 20-year treaty of friendship and cooperation with former Soviet Union. Finally, in the changed situations due to disintegration of Soviet Union in 1991, in the context of changed international strategic environment to secure its interests in Asia-Pacific region, India established military-to-military relations with America on one hand and joined ASEAN Regional Group on the other. International reputation. An important aspect of India's foreign policy has been the maintaining of its international reputation. India has never been in favor of playing a secondary role in international politics, rather it wants to be in the lead role. Therefore, from the very beginning, India has expressed not only its reaction but also shown deep interest in the issues related to international peace, security, economic development, independence of new nations, etc. With regard to the problems of casteism and apartheid in African and Asian countries, India not only expressed sharp reactions but also played a lead role in raising these issues and finding their solutions. In the decades of 1970 and 1980, when economic issues replaced political issues in the agenda of international politics, India played its role in this context. In this way, India tried hard to establish new international economic order at international level. Though in the decade of 1990, due to its problems, India was not able to perform a significant role, but it has always been aware of its role. The decline in importance of India in the third world countries is mainly because of lack of personalities like Nehru and Indira. Doubt over many Indian policies related to nuclear tests, change in international politics, apathy of non-alignment movement, etc. Despite these changing standards, India has never been at margin in international politics. United Nations and India. One more issue related with international reputation is India's role in United Nations. Since beginning, India has played a very significant role in the United Nations system. Firstly, India has always favored the cause of international peace. From this point of view, India has not only expressed its faith in the institution but also performed its responsibilities by following its principles, values and policies. India has played an important role in the context of 18 Nations Summit called in the context of Indonesia and independence of Italian Somalia, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria and Cyprus, etc. India has played an important role for UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. India has been actively trying to eradicate poverty and unemployment in third world countries through United Nations. Besides above political activities, India's role in the economic changes in later decades is also important. India's reactions on the issues like New International Economic Order, North-South Dialogue, GATT summits, etc. have been significant. After that, in changing environment, India is now equally aware of present problems. India is equally instrumental in the context of issues supported by UN like problems of environment, terrorism, saving earth, ozone layer, ecological balance and pollution of environment, etc. as it was in the decades of 1950 and 1960 for the independence of third world countries. India is facing a major deterrent while performing its role in UN, which is related to decision-making process in the institution. In this institution, no decision is effective unless it is approved by 5 permanent veto nation members. Therefore, on many issues, instead of taking a justifiable decision, the decisions are based on the supremacy of these nations. So, India is a strong contender of democratization of UN Security Council. Therefore, despite many changes, India's faith in United Nations, its active participation and responsibilities is intact. Economic development. An important objective of India's foreign policy is economic development. So it becomes imperative to evaluate India's economic foreign policy in these 6 decades. As far as the question of economic foreign policy is concerned, it has been active at 3 levels. 1. Not much importance to foreign trade, 1947 to 65. 2. Export promotion policy, 1965 to 85. 3. Policy of liberalization and globalization, 1985 to 2011. The main components of these policies have been India's foreign trade, foreign economic aid, private capital investment, and establishing joint enterprise. Through India's foreign policy, the process of economic development had to pass through many stages as per the international situations. In the beginning, by adopting a mixed economy, India tried to reap the benefits of both capitalistic and socialistic systems. In this context, economic aid and not economic trade has been the main basis of India's foreign policy. By the middle of 1980s, India's economic condition had stumbled. At international level, change in India's economic foreign policy was due to adoption of economic reforms even by socialistic countries and connecting with capitalistic countries and disintegration of Soviet Union. Beside internal factors, there was extreme deterioration in economic infrastructure. So, India started the process of economic reforms in 1991. Under it, through the process of liberalization and globalization, India connected itself to capitalistic system. But it does not mean that India has become capable of economic development, as even today the problems of poverty, hunger, disease, unemployment, etc. are present on a large scale. Therefore, the actual economic development of India will depend on the direction of its development. Despite all efforts, India's trade is only 1.1% of total world trade. The deficit in trade balance is continuously increasing. The burden of foreign debt has increased. 25% of its annual budget is spent on payments of interest on loans and services. This indicates that since beginning, India's foreign economic policy is neither clear nor as per Indian situations. In the context of solution of problems, India's foreign policy can be evaluated on the basis of the ways in which it has faced it in the last 60 years. In these years, India had to face multiple challenges at multilateral, bilateral and regional level. Only after analyzing in detail about India's capabilities to fight with these challenges, we can arrive at some conclusion. India's foreign policy had following challenges. 1. Cold War. 2. War at borders. 3. Economic development. 4. Establishing peace. 5. Building new economic world order. And 6. New world order. Cold War. By Following the policy of non-alignment at international level, India not only succeeded in keeping itself aloof from the power conflict between various military organizations and superpowers, but also tried to establish economic relations with both the superpowers. At regional level, for maintaining peace and good relations with neighbors, India followed the principles of Panchsheel and created an environment of peaceful coexistence. In this context, even after initial support, India could not establish cordial relations with neighbors. At international level, despite initial inclination towards America, India succeeded in building cordial relations with former Soviet Union only. Due to Indo-Soviet friendship, India could strongly face the politics of Cold War, but new Cold War increased India's tensions as this brought the Cold War near its borders. War at borders. In this short period, India has experienced 5 wars: 1947-48, 1962, 1965, 1971, and 1999 at its borders. In first 3 years, India could not protect its interests. In the first war, India lost 1/3 of Kashmir to Pakistan, which was now known as Pak-occupied Kashmir. In the second war, thousands of kilometers of area was captured by China. In the third war, India had to return the Pakistani area won under the Tashkent Agreement. So in the first 3 wars, India did not gain anything, rather lost. But fourth war was a determining war in India's favor, which besides changing South Asia's map, increased India's reputation in Asia and world. The fifth undeclared war was fought officially between 25th May to 26th July in Kargil. Finally, India's Operation Vijay was successful and Pakistan had to face disappointment at strategic, diplomatic and political level. But even then, the future border disputes and threats from Pakistan and China cannot be denied. Economic development. In post-Cold War era, to tackle the situations that arose due to external pressures like economic pressures due to disintegration of Soviet Union, Gulf War, incidence of oil prices, and some internal pressures like political instability, corruption, scandals, bureaucracy, etc., India changed its economic policy. It tried to compensate the loss to Soviet Union and socialist countries through Indian exports. In this context, on the one hand, India adopted East policy and on the other hand, received capital investments from Western countries by opting for the process of liberalization. And as a result, it was successful in getting huge economic aid from Bretton Woods institutes. What would be the future impact of this on economic development is still a matter of concern. Establishing peace. India's foreign policy has continuously tried for world peace and security. Since beginning, India has been a participant in disarmament process. However, regarding traditional weapons, there is a lack of any agreement and process of disarmament is not smooth. With a view to put an end to the race of nuclear weapons, 3 main efforts have been done: Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. But these proposals are not accepted by India as these are biased and are not universal. India has taken initiative in the declaration of peace zones, but still these declarations could not be implemented. So in this area, despite its serious efforts, India could not have any remarkable achievement. Building a new economic world order. At the time of finalizing of Bretton Woods model in the context of nature of international economic order, the agreements over 2 institutes, World Bank and Monetary Fund, were completed, but no consensus could be built over International Trade Organization. So GATT came into existence as an ad hoc arrangement which will determine bilateral terms of trade for a limited period. Since 1970, by associating itself with these institutions, India has stressed on the building of a new economic world order based on the principle of justice and equality, which is trying to remove the economic differences between developed and developing nations. So, these efforts have led to the birth of WTO, but it cannot be said that to what extent this institution will be beneficial for the developing nations. Secondly, still some developed countries impose bilateral trade restrictions through bypassing this multilateral organization. So there are no remarkable achievements in this area, and in future also no such possibilities are visible. New World Order. As a consequence of disintegration of Soviet Union and end of Cold War, the world order has basically changed. This process of change is still continuing. Due to these changes, India is worried that this new world order should be based on the principles of equality, courtesy, cooperation, friendship, sovereignty, and prosperity, and not on the basis of supremacy of one or two powerful nations. If the new system will be based on inequality, then developing nations will lag behind and will be on the margin of politics. Whether India will be able to do something in this regard cannot be said. We should view India's demand of democratization of UN in this context. This is the only way through which India can influence the whole process. Let me conclude this module by saying that India's foreign policy has been partially successful and partially unsuccessful. For it to become completely successful, India first of all needs to focus on its institutional development. Along with institutional development, India also needs to resolve its issues with its neighboring countries, especially border issues with Pakistan and China. Also, not only the issues, but then it becomes important for us to focus on our internal development as well, and thus India needs to stand out on economic levels as well. Concluding this, we can say that for any country's foreign policy, it becomes important for it to have strong international connections, for which it is very important to have strong and sound internal conditions as well, and a combination and cordial relationship between international events and internal factors are important for any country's economic policy to become successful at the world stage and hence boost up its foreign relations with the other countries. Thank you.